The last episode showed the police who were suspended earlier was taken back to work immediately. This also shades how discrimination against blacks haven't gone completely yet. Jeff's situation is depicted in the 9th episode. Let's see what will happen to Jeff in the jail. Some people have written letters to Jeff. The letters are taken to the room. Jeff then starts reading the letters. One of the letter was from a school student named Alice. The letter said, "Brother Jeff, my schoolmates used to talk about you. I have made a comic book on you." Jeff takes that book. Then Jeff continues to read the letter. "If you liked my comic book, please do send me back your autograph. I'm sending $5 for that." After finishing reading that letter, Jeff takes a paper and draws a hand cut, his autograph on it. Even his autograph was frightening. That noon, the prisoners were having lunch. Meanwhile, Jeff sees a chicken piece in his plate and then stood up on his chair to say out loud, "This looks like a human meat," which makes it more interesting for me to eat it. The other prisoners didn't like what Jeff just said. Then Jeff leaves. Glenda packing her things from her home is the next scene. As Jeff's case got finished, Glenda decided to go back to her apartment. Glenda's daughter asks her, "Don't go, Mom. Why don't you stay with us?" Glenda replies, "I have to go, dear." And then she leaves. She was traveling in a car. Police were still present there as it was crime place. Glenda then goes to her room. Her daughter had accompanied her. When she opens her apartment door, she stared at Jeff's room. Glenda still has a feeling that Jeff lives there. She becomes a bit afraid because of that. While she was unpacking her things, she notices Jeff's ventilation hole. Daughter says, "You can't stay here, Mom." You still believes that Jeff is living nearby. The smell is still present in the air here. You are afraid of all that still. Glenda says, "No, dear, I'm fine." Daughter says, "No, you are still afraid. You cannot stay here. Come with me." Glenda says, "No, I'm not going anywhere else. This is my home." The daughter hugs Glenda and says, "If at all you feel like frightened or can't live alone, you have to come back to us." Then the daughter leaves. Jeff receiving more letters is the next scene. He got $20 now. Meanwhile, Jeff notices a police officer walking outside his cell. He calls the officer showing the $20 and says, "I will give you $20. Can you buy me a thing I need?" It became night. A sound of somebody screaming is heard in the jail. It was from Jeff's cell, as the thing he told to buy was a tape having sounds of screams. Hearing that screams, Jeff sleeps peacefully. He was so addicted that he could only sleep hearing to that. A police officer comes and tells him to turn it off. Jeff says, "I paid for this. I can only sleep by hearing this. I can't sleep as you are not turning the lights off here." The police says, taking Jeff's tape back, "So you will only sleep if you hear screams, don't you? You don't have to sleep then." Tony's mother taking the letters came for her is the next scene. She sees a comic book of Jeff. It was an invitation for her to come to that comic book company. The next day, she goes to that company out of curiosity. The company manager says to her in the office, "We are going to release a book based on Jeff's life. We also want to incorporate about your son, Tony, in that. Can you talk about your son?" She asks for what? "Should everyone enjoy reading about my son's death?" He says, "No, we want to show Jeff's brutalities to the world through this book." Then he takes out a book and shows it to her. He says, "This is a book written by Jeff's father, Lionel. It includes Jeff's entire story from his childhood till he went to jail. Now he earns from this." In the last episode, didn't we see Lionel typing something? It was this: "If you tell about your son, we could include his story, and a share from the earnings is yours." Thus she agrees to do it, keeping in mind that Jeff's brutalities will be known to the unknown too. Sherry and Lionel sitting together in a restaurant is the next scene. Sherry reads the book on Jeff of Lionel and says, "Good one. Your story is awesome. This book is now so famous." Lionel becomes happy hearing that. Jeff wiping the jail floor is the next scene. He notices a TV in a nearby room. It was Lionel's interview. The book that Lionel wrote on Jeff has become famous now. On that basis is what? Lionel being interviewed now. Jeff becomes happy seeing that. Lionel and Sherry sitting in a lawyer's office is the next scene. A case has been filed on the matter of Lionel's book's profit. They have approached a lawyer to know about that. Lionel and Sherry becomes angry as the lawyer explains the problem, saying that, "As you are receiving a percentage of profit from your book, the victims' families have raised a complaint, saying that they need a percentage of that profit, as their son's stories are included too." Jeff's victim, the 14-year-old boy, Connor's family's situation is shown in the next scene. They were all in great grief on Connor's demise. They were Japanese who came to US long back. The phone bell rings and the father takes it. It was a threat call that said, "Don't you want the profit from that book? You are going to die here. Go back to your own lands." Nobody knew who that was. We might think that it would be Lionel, but as Lionel wasn't that kind of person. Let's wait and see who it was. Connor's brother sleeping is the next scene. He suddenly wakes up as he sees a nightmare about Jeff. He goes to the kitchen to drink some water. He finds his mother crying looking at Connor's photo. Connor's brother also becomes sad seeing that. An award ceremony is shown in the next scene. Many police were gathered there. It was the Milwaukee City Police Station Officer of the Year program. Meanwhile, another function was taking place, for which the chief officer was the leader. He says in his speech, "We are going to announce the Best Citizen Award here. It is for none other than a person who constantly tried to inform about a serial killer and eventually brought his brutalities to the world. That person but failed initially because the police ignored that person completely. That person wouldn't even have slept a day peacefully." Yes, this year's Best Citizen Award goes to none other than Glenda Cleveland. Glenda starts her speech saying, "I'm not worthy of this award, but I'm receiving this now for the Jeff the Monster's victims. Today, let's remember about the ones we lost." On the other side, the other function at the police station is shown. The one who was giving his speech said 2 policemen among us got suspended recently for something they weren't responsible of. Despite they got punished for that, they still chose to stay with us. This year, the award for the best police officer goes to those 2 policemen who served us for years and never left us. 2 policemen stood up and everybody starts applauding. The 2 policemen are the same 2 policemen who left that 14 years old boy with Jeff. This scene shows a great irony of the society, where the awards were received by 2 sections of people who fought against evil and who stood with evil. The discrimination in the society is depicted so clearly through this scene. The Japanese family of the boy going to a lady lawyer is the next scene. She says, "Sir, I've studied the whole case in detail. According to what Jeff did to your boy, we can actually claim a compensation worth of 10 million at least. I will prepare and send an appeal for that immediately." At night, Glenda was sitting in her room, watching TV. Suddenly she looks at the ventilation hole. It used to remind her, screams from Jeff's room. She starts becoming scared to sit there alone. She then takes her blanket and pillow to the downstairs. There were a lot of people who were afraid to sleep alone and couldn't sleep well, sleeping together there. Glenda joins them and talks to one of the lady who was awake till Glenda got her sleep. Meanwhile, Connor's father was sitting in his home and suddenly he receives a threat call again that said, "You filed a case claiming for $10 million, didn't you? I will show you what I can do. Who do you think you are? I'm not going to spare you anymore." Connor's father just stood listening to all that without replying anything. It became morning. The residential president comes to the ones who were sleeping there outside including Glenda and tells them, "Friends, the government had decided to demolish our building. We are given 2 months of time to leave. Everybody should find a new place to live within the time period. All of you have to agree with this decision and cooperate." Then the president leaves. Glenda participating in the funeral of Connor is the next scene. The funeral is happening in a church. She meets a person there. That person tells to her that, "We got the boy's body in pieces. We still haven't received the boy's whole body." Glenda becomes too sad hearing and asks for the boy's father. That person takes Glenda to Connor's father who was sitting there on a bench. Glenda goes and sits with that person, then says, "I'm Glenda. I called the cops seeing your boy there with Jeff, but police chose to believe Jeff that day. If they had believed me, your son would have been with you now, and many others too would have been alive today. If I had stood strongly against the police that day, all these would haven't happened now. I didn't do that. You son died because of me. Please forgive me." Glenda bursts into tears. The father sadly says, "It's alright. We will try to believe that everything happened was just God's decision." Lionel going to a old age home is the next scene. Jeff's grandmother lives there now. She is almost bedridden now. Lionel talks to her, but she doesn't reply anything. After some time Lionel leaves from there. On a night, some boys stand outside Glenda's apartment. They act like Jeff and somebody from them takes photos of that too. Glenda and her daughter who came from shopping see that and asks children, "What are you doing here?" One from them says, "We are trying to take photos of what Jeff did here." Glenda's daughter says, "You can't stay here taking pictures like that." One from them says, who said, "We have every right to take pictures here." The daughter becomes angry and destroys the camera by throwing it on the floor. Glenda says, "Children, you have to go to your homes," and they leaves. Glenda and her daughter watching TV is the next scene. They were watching Jeff's interview on TV. Not only them but everybody else in the country was watching that. Glenda becomes angry watching that and turns off the TV. Daughter asks, "What happened?" Glenda says, "If we keep on listening to him, We might also go and kill somebody. Suddenly somebody knocks on their door. Glenda asks out, "Who's that?" A reply comes from outside saying that, "We are police." Glenda opens the door. The police says, "We have received a complaint against your daughter." Daughter comes there. Glenda asks, "What's the case filed against her?" The police says, "We got a complaint saying that she broke a boy's camera. We are arresting her for doing that." Then the police arrests her and takes away in their car. Connor's father and mother going to see the lady lawyer is the next scene. She says, "Didn't we file a case claiming for $10 million? It has been decreased into 8 lakhs by the court because Jeff's every victim's families registered each complaint claiming for compensation. So the money has been equally divided among the victims' families." Connor's father receiving another threat call is the next scene. When the father takes the call, it said, "You got 8 lakhs, didn't you?" Suddenly Connor's mother took the phone from the father and starts talking whatever that came in her mouth. This time we get to know that the police was the actual person behind that. It was like a fun for them. Absurd, isn't it? Rono interviewing a person is the next scene. The same Rono who was saved from Jeff only because of Jeff's grandmother. Rono was psychiatrist and was telling in the interview that we should never be afraid of anything. Some nights, Rono used to go to the pub and used to dance there. Sometimes he even feels like Jeff coming near him. Rono becomes scared as that feeling comes. The same Rono who tells others to not be scared is himself scared of Jeff. Jeff the monster had already become a huge fear among the citizens. One day, Glenda was entering her room, and the association president comes to her and says, "The building is going to be demolished next week." Glenda says, "Yeah, I know. What are they going to do here after demolishing this building?" President says, "Maybe they'll construct some park or something." Glenda says, "Can I say something? In my opinion, a memoriam should be constructed here on the memory of Jeff's victims." President replies, "Yeah, that's a really good idea. I'll ask about this to the officers." The next week, their apartment building gets demolished. Meanwhile, Jeff was sitting in the church of the jail. Some prisoners were praying there. Suddenly a prisoner comes and stabs Jeff on his neck with a rod and says, "You should never ever kill another." Jeff fell to the ground and struggled lying there. The police took him to the hospital. He wasn't injured seriously. Jeff still receives letters and reads those lying on his hospital bed. Jeff reads it. "Hello Jeff, I'm your fan. Many people are well known for many things in this world. They all have fans. You are also now a renowned person. That means you are a celebrity now. And I'm your first ever fan." After reading the letter, Jeff realizes that he is a celebrity now. This episode ends here. Jeff did everything brutal in his life, and now there are even fans for it. The next episode will show what all will Jeff do inside the jail. We will be back soon with the final episode.